All right, let's take a look. The power snatch complex. Okay. A little work around the knees. Good. Oh, up, up. Oh, that's save. And let's take a look at that later. But let's go back. I want to see your setup. So everything's in line. You're a little behind the bar, it looks like. And then you have these knees to work around, these long legs. I'm sure I'm not the first person, but you got to figure out a way to get around it. I think increasing your hip angle or getting your hips a little bit higher is going to pay off. And then if you can push your knees out as much as possible, it's going to be good. I mean, I've seen people with they basically go onto the sides of their feet when they pull. I'm not saying you should do that, but the focus is to get some more ankle mobility and then creating that straight bar pass so you don't have this big, it's not huge, but you're wrapping the bar a little bit around it, or the knees have to make such a big movement to get out of the way that you end up with this flat back, and you're kind of compensating so the hips will shoot out, and then you got to drive it up from there. So hips kind of drive out, and then you're almost like straight legged here. It just creates a pretty big bar path in transitioning. So I try to focus on as straight a bar path to the hip as possible, and that makes a straight bar path up from the hip overhead. And so you're making it work for you. Would like to see a little more sit down instead of a knee forward position. But what was that? 130? A pretty easy 130 power snatch. Okay. Again, little knees go all the way out, clearing the way for the bar. And the back does all the lifting. So you're pretty much right here. It looks like you just did a deadlift, and then you're gonna snatch it up overhead. So it's a snatch grip, high like RDL right here, and then drive up. So good bar path. You're strong enough with your upper body to maintain it, but once you get to heavier weights, it's gonna start deciding where the bar goes. Your hips, your shoulders are not gonna be able to catch it and pull it back to where you want it. And there's so much waver on the bar, or rush to get under, and it kind of you weren't tight as you received it. That's why there's a little waver. This swing back onto the heel. I've done this plenty of times, so it's not a big deal. But you saved it. You want to get into a position where you're not having that. Obviously, you don't want to have these lifts that kind of like, oh, he almost had it, and then he dumped it behind him or forward. But that's just getting used to over it. Squats, I mean, you're a tall guy, longer limbs, you got to control a lot more. I mean, shorter limb guys are going to have easier time keeping that weight balance because it's all the levers and whatnot are in position or easier to manage. Let's take a look here. So you went from straight back, and then it's a lot of force on the bar. You get it really high, and then you're writing it down. As you squat down, and that as a receiving position, just think about straight arms pushing straight up, and that should clear up some of this. But it's also just getting your body more used to all working at the same time for the overhead squat. All right, let's take a look at the pull here. Yeah, get that out of the way. So even when you lifted right there, you practiced hips high and pull. Think about squatting away from the bar or squatting with the bar. Okay, a lot of waver. It's still a new movement, which is it's totally fine, but learning what you want and kind of being more specific in your training. So good position here. The knees go back, not as badly as the full lifts. This is really good right here. This transition from the knees to the hip, it could be a little bit closer, but I like how you have your knees bent here, and it's ready to drive up. An aggressive drive to the floor. Elbows are not, it's a little high. I'd say it's good practice with this lighter weight, but it doesn't have to go all the way over high. I kind of finish mine at chest height. So let me see where I'm at here. So right about here, let's see if we can get back to it. This is, you're diving under. You kind of got this weird panda pull, half overhead pull. And so your shoulders and arms aren't doing much here. You want to be staying tight, and this transition from, this is where you should have finished it and went back down. It's a lightweight, so you made it higher. But just for the sake of the exercise, chest height is about where you want it. And then I would tell you to pull those elbows back behind you like you're rowing the bar into the chest. But I think having a little guidance is just better because this isn't where you want to be. Yeah, this is just almost like you're forcing yourself to drive under the bar. Think about it more as just a straight up and down movement. You drive up, bar goes to about here, and then you go back down. That would have been a lot better. So think of it a little more mindful about how you practice the pulling exercises. It is a good training exercise. I mean, you're not going to get away from pulling in any of your lifts. It's good to practice it with a very, very specific mindset. Think about how high you want to pull it, where's your pockets, where's your stopping point, what are your elbows doing, and then you'll have a much better time with it.